everybody, I'm back, and I'm back for a while now. Just got in this morning actually from Los Angeles, so I'm a little jet lagged. It's now 6:40 p.m, so I'm slowly getting towards sleep time, which is good. Just been trying to keep myself awake all day, but I thought I'd actually give a video a go. Now, interesting enough about this is I actually just recorded this video previously, but the one thing I didn't have on was my microphone. So you can see, yeah, a little tired and forgot a few things to do, which is pretty annoying. Now, moving on from that, what we're looking at now in this lesson is more lifecycle events for components. Now, in the previous video, we looked at the ngOnChanges, which was to do with changing the reference to an input on a component. And when that happens, that's when the ngOnChanges fires, right? And we spoke about how if you just change a property on that input, it doesn't change anything, it won't fire off that event. However, in this video, we're going to look at three events. We're going to look at init. We're going to look at one called DoCheck, which I'll have to explain quite a lot about, and we're going to look at destroy. So what I'm going to do for this video is I've already created a Lifecycle hooks part 2 project, and I'm not going to stick with the GitHub repository for this one just because it's really just demonstrating how the Lifecycle hooks works. It's not really going to be anything we're going to use for the little mini project we're creating. Okay, so what I've done is I've just created a folder and a new project, and I've started up Visual Studio Code, to which I will now load in that Lifecycle hooks, and we'll go to the app folder because we're not going to go anything outside of that. Alright, so basic skeleton, haven't changed anything yet. Okay, got the CLI running and the default screen loaded here. So, in this video, what I'm going to do is to demonstrate the init and the destroy and the DoCheck. I'm going to create three components. The first two are going to be just feature components that will change based on routing toggles. So we'll have a few router links that will change which one loads, right? And the third one will be a child component where we'll look at the relationship between lifecycle events between a parent and child component. So I'm going to create the three components first because it's just easy to do that. So the first one I'm going to create, I'm just going to name it first feature. So we're going to ngg, and make sure you're inside the lifecycle hooks part folder that you have, component, and I'm going to call this first feature. Okay. So that's done. I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to create one called second feature. Alright, and lastly, I'm going to create one called child. Okay, just like that, three components. Right, got that? Now I'm going to go over to the code and you'll see all that's going to load. We've got our three folders. Now normally I would come in here and I'd create a module and a router file and all that kind of stuff. But for this particular video, I'm not going to focus on that just because I've already been through it with you guys. So just to be a little bit lazier and to make things easier on myself, I'm just going to come to the app module and I'm going to load the routes that I want in here. Okay, and you can see already the components using the Angular CLI, I've already loaded the components into this module anyway. So it's just easier to add it. So first I'm going to come up here, I'm going to import the router module. Okay, this is the first step I'm going to take. So router module, like so, router, and then down in here, I'm going to do a router module dot for root, and this stuff you guys should already be fairly familiar with. If you haven't, go back to, I think it's my 5th tutorial where I talk about router module and the for root and the for child and all that other stuff. I think it's either it could be it could be it's either 3, 4, or 5. I can't remember which one it is, but it's one of my earlier tutorials. So for the 2 routes, I'm going to create just a simple path for the second route. We'll just call it, what will we call it? We'll just call it second feature, eh? Second feature. And obviously the component is going to point to the second feature component, right? Nothing major here. And we'll just copy and paste this. And again, I'm not going to explain the double asterisks. You would have seen that in a previous video as well as a catch-all, and we're going to put the first feature component, right? And all this eager loaded, you all know this already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So now that I've got the features loaded, let's just quickly check to make sure it toggles, and to do that we need to add one more thing, which I always forget to do. I'm going to come in here and add router. Sorry, what's it called again? I always forget the name of this. Router outlet, yeah. Like so. And we'll just create that. And then we'll come down, we'll create a couple of router links down here. So we got a router link equals, I'll just do that. Feature 1. And for feature 1, it doesn't matter what the router link was, because as long as it's not the same value as the second router link, which explicitly has to be second dash feature, like that. That's what we put in the for root. That should be all good. So once again, now let's save and just double check that it works. Yep, so we got first feature, and we got, if I click on second feature comes up, first feature comes up, and what I'm going to also do is add a BR tag here, because I hate not having a BR tag. And the other thing I might change here too is I'll change this to Lifecycle. Yep, Lifecycle. Can't spell today. Events part 2. Not 3, 2. Just so we can have a different title. Okay, so we've got our toggles on and off. So now what we want to do is we want to have a look at what this init and destroy events are first. And the DoCheck, right? So, second feature here, I'm not going to really do anything with, because I don't really need it. It's only used for routing away from the first feature. The first feature is where all the work's going to be done. So, don't even have to come in here, don't have to touch it. The only thing I'll probably come and do is change it to second feature loads or something. Just something nicer, like that. But I'm going to come into the first feature. I'm going to go to the class, and you see this OnInit here. Now, I think I've explained this in a previous video, especially when I was explaining ngIf. I'm pretty sure I would have explained it then. But this is an interface to tell a component I want to implement a method that will handle the initialization of this component. Okay, and so when you implement this interface, it requires you to implement this ngOnInit. Now, to implement, obviously in TypeScript you go implements and then the name of the interface. So if I was to remove this method, like so, TypeScript's smart enough in this IDE to complain, say a property on ngOnInit is missing, we need it, so I'll put that back. Okay. Now I'm not going to need the constructor for this, but essentially what the constructor is in terms of the life cycle is it allows you to set up local variables and services and things like that. But you'll see that more when we get into services. So we're going to add 2 more interfaces that we need. One is DoCheck, and the other one is OnDestroy. Okay, and we're going to implement those over here. So DoCheck and OnDestroy. Okay, so that now is going to complain and say we need an ngDoCheck and an ngOnDestroy. So let's provide those. Now, unfortunately, the IDE is not smart enough to do this for me. I wish it was. So you do kind of have to do a little bit of copy and pasting here. I'm sure I can get it to work at some point. So now we've got our 3 lifecycle methods. So let's talk about them for a second. So ngOnInit, what does it do? Well, every component is initialized, obviously, when you add it to the framework. So when the Angular bootstrapper is going through, it's looking at your code, and it's bootstrapping your application. It reads your component tag and goes, okay, you want me to bootstrap this type of component, right? So whether it be from a route or whether it be from reading some JavaScript files that maps to the selector, that kind of thing. So this selector dictates which component's loaded from the bootstrap point of view. So once it's bootstrapped, then it gets to the point where components get initialized, okay? And that's essentially what this ngOnInit is all about. Now, when is it used and what should you do inside of it? Well, it's used only once when the component's getting created. So for the first time, when you create the component, whether it be it's coming from a route or an ngIf statement or an ngSwitch statement, where it's rendered based on a true scenario, i.e. the component is loaded, this will fire. Okay, and I will demonstrate with routes how it can be initialized and destroyed and reinitialized. But essentially, it happens only once, and basically, as long as the component isn't destroyed, it won't be fired again. Destroy is the opposite, obviously. If you get to a situation where a component is no longer needed and it's removed in some particular fashion, whether it be from a Angular directive or your component, a parent component explicitly removes it, or it's part of a switch statement that's no longer true, or even an ngIf that's no longer true, that kind of thing, this will get fired. Okay, so it's kind of, and it's at the end of the life cycle, so everything else will be ran, and then this will get run. Init is second to the ngOnChanges. So as we saw in the previous video, we had an ngOnChanges which acted upon the inputs that came into that component. This is fired after the inputs have been defined. So you can get access to the inputs at this point, but you can't get access to any child components. You can't get access to any data that isn't part of, or that's part of the view itself, or any child components or anything like that. You can't access any of that. The only thing you can access is initialized variables and inputs from other components. Now, what people usually use this for is to go and fetch data from an API if it hasn't happened already, to load onto the screen. Okay, and there's some techniques on how that works, but I'm not going to speak too much about that until we get into services. But essentially, that's what it is. When we create a service, we instantiate it, the component injecting that service, and then inside of ngOnInit, we call the service, and we get the data, and then that's it, right? We've got the data once, and that's all we need to worry about. So, for this example, though, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of logging, right? So just to give you an indication when it gets hit. So console.log first feature component initialized. Now I use an S. You guys can use Z's or whatever. I think S is the proper British way, and I'm from Australia, so I think that's correct. So we're just going to have a look at when this is when this is initialized, and when it's destroyed. Okay, and we'll just have a quick look at how this works. No, just put destroyed. Okay. So quickly, let's jump over to the browser. I'm going to open up the console. Right. I'm going to refresh the page, and as you can see down here, first feature component is initialized. Okay. Now that's happened because we've loaded the screen. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, ticklish throat. So that's happened because we opened the screen. However, it's not the only time it works. As I mentioned, if you've got an ngIf that happens to be true, then it will fire then. If you got a switch statement, which that component will be loaded based on that condition being true, it will also fire then. But for this one, I'm just going to be using route. So if I click away from this feature, then I click feature 2, what you're going to see down here is the first feature is now destroyed, right? Because we don't need to see it anymore. What Angular's gone and done is it's gone and destroyed that component, right? It's like, well, I don't need it anymore. I'm going to load component 2 or feature number 2, right? If I go back to feature 1, right, and click on it, you're going to see once again the feature had to be reinitialized. Why? Well, because we removed it, we destroyed it and we removed it from the DOM because we were in a different route that didn't require it. Okay, that's the case with ngIf. If you change some toggle and you don't require that component anymore, Angular will get rid of it and it will invoke the destroy before it actually deletes it, right? And then when you come back, it'll call initialize. Now, I hope that makes sense from a basic level. That's the basic idea of how those work. Now, what's normally put into a destroy is just things like some cleanup code, such as if you have a web worker or something running in the background and it's dependent on this component existing, right, and it's not needed if the component doesn't exist, then you can basically, release that web worker, or anything that's loop related or asynchronous. That's doing a lot of batch work, right? It's not really doing anything directly with the user interface. You can release that information here on the OnDestroy. Okay, that's kind of what those two are about, init and OnDestroy. There's more to it than that, and I'll explain more when I get to the child feature of this mini application. But I just wanted to quickly explain how the initialization and the destruction works in terms of when you add and remove a component, they get fired. So what is this ngDoCheck though? And we look at it and go, oh, DoCheck, okay, it checks for something. Well, it does check for something. It checks for any changes to anything that's on the page. You might go, what? What does that mean? Anything? Or is in like even components that are not part of this component? The answer is yeah. If there's a component on the screen that happens to be in the same app as the app you're running at the moment, and this is the key factor here, it has to be bootstrapped and part of the same app for it to be applied. So if you've got two apps running, which I don't know if you can do this, I haven't actually tried it, I should try it, but basically as long as it's inside the same app, they'll detect each other. Okay, so if I go and make a change to the parent, it'll affect the child. If I change something for the child, it'll affect the parent. Now I'm going to show that in a minute, but what I want to show here is how you kind of handle the situation of when you're not handling inputs. You might want to do a validation check or something like that, or a Ajax method call based on some changes to the UI. That's what you do in this method, okay? So for the example I've got here, and again, I'm not going to be writing any Ajax calls or anything like that because we haven't covered it, but I'm going to go to the HTML for a second. I'm going to update this HTML. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to put in H2. And I'm going to go old title, like that. And then we'll go P page dot description. You might be saying, what the hell is this? I will get to the point of these in a minute. And then we'll go H3 first feature section, H3. Then we'll put a title with a BR tag here and a description with a BR tag. And this is really poor HTML, but I don't care. Input type equals text, and we have an ng model. Oops, ng model, and we're going to point it to a page.title, Alright, we've got a page.description now, page.title. I think that's all I need for that, and we'll put a BR at the end, just so we can have a new line. And here we're going to have text area for the description, another ng model, page.description, and we're going to put rows of, let's say, 8 and cols of 20, so it's a pretty reasonable size text area, and we'll close that off and like that. Alright, and I'm going to leave it there for the markup for the moment. So now I'm going to go and create this page object and this old title. Okay, so we're coming into here, we're going to come up, we're going to go page, and I'm just going to create it as an object. So you know, title equals, I don't know, whoops, that's not JSON or a JavaScript object. My first feature component. I don't know. It really doesn't matter what I put inside of here at the moment. Description, and I'll just put a description because I'm lazy. And the other thing we needed to add was the old title. Old title equals blah. Okay, we don't really have anything for it. So now if I come in and I run over here, we can see over here, if I change something to description, it's updating the description, right? Up the top here. Old title's not applied to anything yet because we haven't worked with it, and title hasn't done anything yet. Okay, so this is just a small example. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a console.log here, and I'm going to go. I'll just go first feature component ngDoCheck called, and save. So at this point I haven't done anything with those properties at the top, or at least with the title part. So if we look down here now, we've got first feature component initialized. So we can see here we're on the first feature. Then we've got this DoCheck is called, right? So the DoCheck is actually called because we've added some data into this field, and it's called again because we've added some data into this field. And keeping in mind that whenever we change these, it's going to fire one of those off. Okay, if we look, we change anything, it continues to fire off the DoCheck, right? And no matter what, even if we focus away, it's still going to update to 13. If I come back to this, I put focus. It doesn't apply to focus, but if I press space, you'll see that it's adding another DoCheck. So this DoCheck is really, really expensive. It's something that, you know, it gets fired very frequently. So the one thing you want to be very careful of here is that if you're going to do something like an Ajax call to confirm that, you know, maybe a title, this title here is, it has to be unique or something, right? So we can go, or if it's changed, we're going to update the old title, right? So we go if this dot old title is not equal to this dot title, right? So if they're not the same, let's make them the same. This is just a simple example, okay? This dot page dot title. Oops. Okay, so now you expect every time I change something, if the title changes, and in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in here console.log first feature title was changed. First feature component title was changed. I'm trying to stick with the theme. Okay, so we go back. So we build. We can see down here. First feature component title was changed. Alright. After the DoCheck call, Why was this? Well, if we look at it, the old tile was blank the first time we come in, whereas the page.tile was already set. Right? If I was to make this the same as this, it wouldn't have fired. But see, DoCheck was fired. It checked to see if they were the same. If they weren't the same, it updated it. Okay, and this is fired directly after initialization. So as soon as you initialize the component, DoCheck is the next thing it's called to do comparisons such as this, right? So in here, I could put like perform Ajax email validation unique validator or something. Now there are better ways to do validation in Angular 2 that don't require you to do it this way, but this is a way, and there's a few reasons, or there's a few times that you may do it this way, but generally, it's frowned upon to do it this way. Anyway, it's more to do with handling whenever anything changes on any component, anywhere, anytime. And I will show you that when I do the child component. And in fact, I'm going to start on that right now because that's it. Just understand DoCheck is called very frequently. Okay? So, and the other thing I wanted to show you is if I come in here and you can see the tile was changed. If I come and clear this out, you'll see the DoCheck gets 5 whenever I change the description, but you'll see the tile's not being changed, or that's a second message. If I come in here and change this, now it's actually applying, DoCheck and the tile has changed, like that. But if I blur away, which is not a change, you won't see feature component tile change, you'll just see ngDoCheck. See? And that's it. That's pretty much the main part for a single component. Now, the next thing I want to show is how does it work if you've got child components. Okay, how does these DoChecks work? How do these initializers work? How does destruction work, right? Because, they're all dependent on each other. So let's go over to the child component. Alright, so we're going to come over, I'm going to go to the child component, I'm going to go straight to the markup. Okay, because I like to get the markup done first. So we go to child component. I'm going to create, I can leave the paragraph here. I'm going to create a child field value, and we'll put some interpolation in here. And it's just like that. We'll put it on a new line, and we'll have child input field value. So child input field, and under here I'll put child field is equal to an input of type equals text. I'll explain in a minute what this is doing. Ng model equals child field. Okay, so at the moment in this child component we're going to be looking at two things. We're going to be looking at a child field property and a child input field property, right? And we can see down here that there's an ng model on the child field, right? So that's probably going to indicate this child field is very close. Well, not necessarily, but it probably is, right? So I'm going to go into the child component TS, and I'm going to add those methods or those properties. So we're going to have child field, which is a top string. Okay. Now for the next one, which is the input, we're going to actually use an input here. All right. We have child input field of type string. To do this, I need to include the input. Right. We're going to remove the constructor. We already have ng on it, but we need destroy and DoCheck. So let's add those. So DoCheck and OnDestroy. And for child field, I might give this a default value of, I don't know, what's a good default value? I'll just call it child value. That's not a very good value, but who cares? Now I'll come in and I'll implement DoCheck, and OnDestroy. So component completed, because we know why. We need to supply DoCheck and also the ngOnDestroy. Right. Now for this particular example, I'm gonna console out everything. So console.log child component initialized. Right. Console.log child component DoCheck. Cool. Like so. And finally, console.log child component destroyed. So let's just have a quick look at this. The other thing we need to do is we need to include this inside of our feature. So underneath all this stuff, we need to have more information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a whole section here. So we're just going to go H3, and I'll call it the child section. And I always type something else then. No, I don't normally type swear words. It's not a force I have or anything like that. Child input value, input type equals text, ng model equals child input value. Now I'll get to the point of this in a minute. So that's essentially the property. It's going to be bound and passed down into the child component. So we've got that, and now we come down here. We go app-child because we know that's the selected app component. I've got that child input field. Remember that input attribute, and we're actually going to equal it to the child input value up here. Right, nothing major. And then just to be sure, let's make sure this is initialized. It doesn't really matter what it's called, but I'm going to save this first. First feature component. Come down here, and I'll call it child input value, I guess. Easy enough. So let's go over and have a look at what happens now. I'll let the page load. I'm gonna refresh the page. So keep in mind we have two components loaded here now on this route. One is the main feature, and then there's a child component that's part of the feature. So let's go return and have a look at what we've got here. Okay. We've got first feature component is initialized. Well, we just got there, right? We haven't done anything with the first feature component yet. So we're initializing its data. Then we're calling it DoCheck just to ensure that we're in fact checking for something. That happens after every initialization, just because things are getting changed. Then you've got the first feature component title was changed. Well, that was because the old title starts off blank, but the value inside of this title happened to have a value in it. So because they weren't equal, then basically the that title change message was generated. Now, once the first feature component is initialized, if it has any children, they get initialized. So in this case, it happens to be basically here down. That blue section right there is that's all the child component. This is actually part of the feature, which is passed in as an input. But you can see with the child component, that gets initialized after the first feature. Same with DoCheck, that gets fired after, and so on and so forth. However, if I come in now, I clear this, and I go to feature 2. So in other words, we don't want to see these sections anymore. We just want to go and load up the feature 2 component. So if I click on it, you'll see down here, oh, what's this? The child component is destroyed first, then the first feature is destroyed. Now, so basically, what OnInit tries to do is it looks at a component and goes, does this have any dependency components? Yes or no? Okay, let's call its destroy, and then it works its way up. You know, it recursively works its way up to the parent. That's what's happening here. Okay, so nothing else major. You know, just to keep in mind that when things are getting initialized, if I click on feature 1, when we initialize it for the first time, it's the main component, then the children. When it's destroyed, it's the children first, then the main component. Okay, it's the opposite effect. And once again, what you put inside there is no different to any of the parents. It's just the order in which they're called. That's important here. That's the distinction. Now, the other thing I want to show too is this DoCheck and how it's being called in a number of different areas. Okay, so that's why I wanted to have this separation of concerns between child and parents, and just so you can see all the differences. Okay, so I'm gonna click. I'm gonna enter there. I'm gonna ignore all this for the minute. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the title here of the component. Now, this is unrelated to the child component at all. This field has got nothing. It's not being passed in as a parameter or anything. Okay, so this child input, this child component knows nothing about this specifically, but because I make a change up here, what it's actually going to do is it is going to fire off the DoCheck anyway. So whenever something is changed inside of any Angular component, all components are basically broadcasted with a DoCheck call. Okay, hey, look, something changed to me over here. Do you want to act on it? And then basically each component will say, yeah, I'll act on any change, you know, or they might act only on specific changes depending on how it's all set up. However, inside the DoCheck, anything you can access is your own data, unless you make references to other components, which you can do, and which I will show you how that's done in the, I don't know if it'll be the next video, maybe it's the video after. We'll see. Basically, you can reference other components from your component, and at that point, you can get the data from other components, but you can't get it directly by, you know, just making API calls, so to speak. You have to reference things. So that's basically when I called something that wasn't related to the child still understood it, right? What if I go and change something in the child, right? Well, I just focused in this child field, which is inside the child component, and once again, the first feature component DoCheck was called first. Then the child was, okay? Same pattern, different location, same pattern. If I clear this out again, now this input here is being passed to the child, right, from the parent. So if I change this, again, no difference. DoCheck is called by the first feature component first, then the child component fires. Okay, that's always going to be the case, no matter what happens. If you click over here, if it'll go around broadcasting all the parent components, and then the parent components will do its DoCheck call, and then it will call its children's DoCheck call, and so on and so forth, all the way down the chain. Okay, that's just something to keep an eye on. And basically, at the end of the day, DoCheck is just to check for things that, you know, like validation and stuff like that, that the ng model binding won't do for you out of the box. Some of this stuff that you can do with directives can counteract all these DoCheck calls, but I'll mention more about that when I get to it. The understanding you need to have at this point is that it's called very frequently, and it's called basically when any component changes its status in terms of the data it has inside of it. So I'm going to leave the video there. I don't think there's much else to add on top of that. In the next video, I'm going to look at content, and content not in the way that you think, but it's going to be 2 more lifecycle events to do with content, and it'll cover 2 events such as content after init and content after checked. I think is what they're called. ng content. Hang on, let me remember what they're called. Just let me pause the video for a sec. Sorry guys, I'm back. Yeah, it's after content init and after content checked, and then there's another one called after view init and after view checked, right? And basically the next 2 videos will be about the differences between those 2, you know, when to implement stuff in a content init versus a view init, and you know, the checked after content checked versus after view checked, and what all the differences are between all 4 lifecycle views. But just for the next one, I'm going to be looking at content and so what's called transclusion in AngularJS, the original AngularJS. Basically, these 2 lifecycle events will handle transclusion. Okay, by getting references to other content items and things like that. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go. I hope this has been helpful. I'm sorry if it's not as easy to understand in this video, just because, you know, I'm very tired and I've just gotten off a, well, I haven't just got off a plane, but you know, I'm still trying to get to Melbourne time, so I hope you can forgive me for that. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go. Have a good one. Once again, leave messages in the comments, like the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed, get others to subscribe. Helps me out, makes me more passionate to do what I want to do. I'm at nearly 250 subscribers right now. In fact, I'm just going to quickly check my YouTube channel just to see what I'm at. 248, but I don't think that's accurate. I think because Google caches a lot of things. Social Blade has definitely got an API call you can make that gives you the right, what's it called? I thought it was Social Blade. I'll just look that up. Yeah, here we go, Social Blade. This is not 100% accurate. Like my earnings are pretty close though. Down here you can see that I don't make a lot of money. That's alright. That's not what I do this for. So I've got 248 here, but I believe if I go down, I check the live subscriber count. You wait a couple of seconds. This will give you the actual amount. Yeah, looks like I've still got 248. Okay. That's good. I mean, 248 is not bad. I would have preferred 250, but I'll take this for now. Considering I haven't done any work. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go because I need to edit this and get this up for you guys. Have a good one, and I will put up some more videos in the next few days. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit more alert. I also got just so I know, I've got my sister having a baby tomorrow, so that's going to take up some of my time this weekend as well. Even though it's going to be a Friday here. Yeah. Anyway, I'll still get to the videos. Don't worry. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.